Welcome to the Q&A Cafe. We're here at the Georgetown Club in Georgetown, and it's wonderful to start the fall season. I want to thank the Georgetown Club. I want to thank Georgetown Cupcake, and especially I want to thank our first guest of the fall season, Tom Sietsema. I'm going to try not to giggle looking at you, but because Tom is the food and restaurant critic of the Washington Post, he's in disguise. So I kind of like it. I really dig it. And among other things, we're going to talk about a lot, but we're also celebrating the just published Washington Post Fall Dining Guide for 2018. And is the Hall of Fame in here too?
The Hall of Fame is in there.
So
Everything's in there.
Now, let me ask you this. When a food writer gets to the point where they're doing a Hall of Fame, does that mean that you are, does that mean you're in the leveling off part of your career? I mean, a new food critic wouldn't be doing a Hall of Fame, right?
Probably
you can only
not.
do that when you are a veteran food critic.
You know, I do this top 10 list every year, and it's pretty popular. But I think having a Hall of Fame was my way of getting around putting these great restaurants in the top 10 lists again and again. I think there should be some surprises every year. So I was able to do that this year with the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I went back to all those places too, as I do all the restaurants in the dining guide. I went back to all of them at least once with groups of people, and sometimes 2 or 3 times, just to make sure they deserve to be in this collection.
Right. So let me ask you this. Would you ever do a Hall of Fame of chefs?
Oh, wow. Of course.
And I wonder, I mean, I made up a list of my own, and I wanted to see if you'd agree or disagree with me.
Are there any chefs in the audience today? This is televised. This is going to live on,
no,
right?
You don't have to agree with me.
Oh my goodness.
No, because I mean, I think these are probably largely softballs, but Jean-Louis Paladin.
Oh,
He started it all.
He started it all. He put Washington on the dining map back in the 70s. And Phyllis Richmond, my predecessor, credits her career to him. You know, people were coming to Washington to eat at Jean-Louis, and they were paying attention to the restaurant critic and criticism in Washington at that time. Yeah, he's the guy who kind of started it all.
So we agree on that one.
Yes,
because he was that pivot from meat and potatoes.
Sure.
It's not that we didn't have French restaurants, but they were French bistro restaurants, and he had a cuisine that was all his own.
Well, I just want to go back to that for 1 minute. I think sometimes Washington has been painted as a steakhouse town for far too long, and that really hasn't been true for a long time. People have always been able to eat cheaply in Washington and high on the hog in Washington, I think. And what we were missing for a long time were sort of these great neighborhood restaurants. And one thing that really improved the dining scene or gave greater access to people, I think, was when the Metro came around in '76 or whatever. People from Washington go to the burbs and vice versa. I think that really spearheaded a lot of good dining in the area.
Right. I think also with Jean-Louis, and this goes taking us way back, is that it brought people back into the city after the riots.
Sure.
And probably also helped the K Street boom.
Right.
That brought people back into the city after the riots.
Sure.
Okay, so another name, Michel Rashard.
Oh, Michel Rashard. No one put out more playful, whimsical, delicious, beautiful food than he did. I really miss him. But the nice thing is that he nurtured a lot of talent in this city and elsewhere. So you can go see his inspiration at places like Convivial with Cedric Maupier, or Unconventional Diner with, the chef, I forget his name.
That's okay.
Yeah, David Desai, yeah.
That's why we have an audience.
Yeah, oh, I love that, thank you, thank you.
Lifelines.
I just drew a blank there. You know, and these people are carrying on that great tradition of really good, high-quality food and making it whimsical and approachable, and there's a little joke inside of everything, but it's not tortured either. How does Central do without Michel? Does it live as a homage to him? You know, I think if you're a good chef, you teach the line cooks, your sous chef, everyone under you, how to
do your
think
food
like you do, how to taste like you do, and I think he's done a very good job of
So when
that.
you go to Central, you're still eating Michel's food.
Sure.
That's great.
I love going back there for that reason too.
Jose Andres?
Oh, Jose. I think he's won every single award but the Nobel Peace Prize at this point, right?
And there's still time for that.
There's still time for that. It's so funny. Whenever I'm fact-checking something, I'll call him like, where are you? Where in the world is Jose? He's pretty amazing. And it's one thing to do all this good around the world, and it's another to keep these high standards that I think he's kept in this city with many restaurants and restaurants across the board, from not exactly cheap eats, but I guess beefsteak, his vegetable forward fast casual place would be inexpensive, but all the way up to mini bar where it's possible to spend $1,000 a person for dinner.
Ouch. And it's in your Hall of Fame.
It is in my Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Nora Puyan, would she?
I have great respect for Nora. I think she was in a group of women in the 70s and 80s who really nurtured this city in a way before a lot of men did.
She was pioneering in a lot of ways. I suppose you'd put Ann Cashin in that same
Ann Cashin, who is still cooking at Johnny's Half Shell up in Adams Morgan. Yeah, they're doing a great job up there. It's one of those places where I would go on my night off, in fact. Just for sort of comfort food, well done.
I thought.
But Nora is great. Nora, I think the restaurant Nora has been inconsistent and very expensive over the years. But I do, hats off to her for being mindful about organic before it was, as important as it is now.
Whether he'd be Hall of Fame yet, I don't know, but definitely has made a difference is Eric Brunner-Yang.
Oh, sure. He just has several restaurants right now that I could eat at just about every night. He's got Makedo on 8th Street Northeast,
I love it.
Which is this really delicious, inexpensive Taiwanese Cambodian food.
It was my last meal before I went in for surgery.
Well, there you go. Good thinking.
I needed some spice because I knew I'd be away from it for a while.
But it's clean, it's interesting.
But it's also these lovely pastries.
Sure.
Patrick O'Connell,
40 years.
Yeah.
That is not easy to do, right?
Yeah.
I never forget that he wasn't trained in a theater. When I go there, he is an actor on a beautiful stage set, and I always worry when I go.
It was his unrealized career. I think that would have been his career if he hadn't been a chef. So.
Sure. Started in a garage, supposedly. This myth has sort of grown over the years, and it's blossomed into him owning.
I went when it was the garage.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I went in its first couple of months when you walked through the basket shop.
Wow.
To get into the restaurant, and they were paper placemats, and the plates were from it's a chain store, but I've watched it grow, and it's all been in his head.
The first time I went there, I went in, I think, a rent-a-wreck, and I had maybe a $300 credit limit on my credit card. And I was just like, oh, do you have a wine under $50? 2 people eating there. So I've watched it grow over the years, and it's really been fun. But
let's use that to talk about how you've grown and how you began, because you started doing the Post. You got the job from Phyllis Richmond, was it in 2000? 2000.
Yeah.
So it's and before that you were with a website, right?
I was at Food Critic for Microsoft.
Right.
It was a short-lived project.
But it had a name. It had
Sidewalk.com.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, it was great fun to work on that. I did that in the 90s at the height of the the internet boom, lots of money. Microsoft
you were quite the renegade too.
It was fun because I was breaking away from
the new
newspapers,
kid on the block.
And it was just so exciting to work at the mothership with these tech people, and we were editorial people, and we would sit around these tables, and it was almost as if we were at the UN. We needed translators. What are you talking about? And we would talk to them about how to review restaurants and how we wanted this to appear on a screen and everything. And early on in the 90s, we were putting little tiny cameras on what we thought were the best tables, and they would creak, 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 and you get a 380.
That's very clever.
Yeah, but now it seems like it was the Pleistocene era. But it was great fun to.
Thank you. Thanks. Would you like a glass
of water?
Please.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
See, we're very casual here. I actually remember you interviewing me, and I don't know if you do this. I was a brand new restaurateur, an accidental restaurateur, suddenly owning this saloon, Nathan's in Georgetown. And you called me up and interviewed me about things that people leave behind.
That was so much fun.
And because you were so surprised by what I said, because yes, people leave credit cards behind all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the stack of credit cards they'd have on the Monday mornings, would be this thick. But the other thing that they would find is wedding rings, and that was
Lots of
that was
wedding
the
rings.
thing you used.
Yeah.
I mean, because the cleanup crew would be sweeping up,
Right.
and along the rim of the bar, there'd be a wedding
Sure.
ring or two, because guys go to slip off the wedding. I learned this from my husband, actually. They go to slip off the wedding ring, because I was not a natural-born restaurateur. They slip off the wedding ring, and they thought it would go in their pocket, and it didn't,
And it
went down on the floor.
And these panic calls Sunday morning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What other restaurateurs told me that they found glass eyeballs, and somebody, a Secret Service agent, left behind Dick Cheney's travel itinerary at Kincaid's,
Dick
and
Cheney
a gun,
used to-
and a gun.
Dick
Whoops.
Cheney used to come to Nathan's, and that's something that's unique to Washington, is catering to the class of people who have Secret Service protection, because it was fascinating to watch the whole procedure, because the agents would come earlier in the day and scope out the place. We'd have 2 doors, so they'd have to watch both doors, and then when they would come back for when the principal was actually eating, they'd populate themselves around the room to try to look like regular diners, but
Drinking
of course,
water.
drinking water, iced tea.
Water. Yeah, right.
And but that was then, and of course now we're in an era where principals go to a restaurant and they get shouted out. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't think it's very hospitable. I
mean, it's
I don't
interesting,
care
though.
what side of the aisle you're on. I just think we need to have safe spaces, and I see restaurants as being different than protesting on the street or in another venue. I think food and restaurants should be a protected arena. I really do. I
Well,
think
as a former
they should not be
restaurateur,
disturbed.
I think of the restaurants and I think how vulnerable they must feel.
Sure.
Because what can you do?
Yeah, they're not used to to
Your door's
security
wide open,
and
right.
your door's wide open, and you want to be welcoming and
Right.
please have a seat, come on in, eat our food, and all of a sudden people are leaping up from the bar and screaming or shouting or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know where this will lead though, because it feels now like it's become a thing.
Right?
And nobody has declared a protocol for it.
Sure.
Maybe that'd be your position, I don't know, but
Well, I do think
maybe
a
it's
lot
up to you to say this is how we're going to handle this.
a lot of restaurateurs are working on security and things like that.
It's just an added expense.
Yeah, it is.
It just makes
All
it.
our meals are going to go up as a result of potential problems.
But back to how you got started. So you had gone to the Foreign Service School at Georgetown.
I went, right up
You
here. I
come
was
here
at the
from
School of Foreign
Minnesota.
Service. Came from Minnesota. Right.
What is it you said once, eating your mother's Jell-O pudding?
My mom was a very good cook, but she was also a
Midwestern
cook.
food isn't necessarily bad food.
It was kind of like a lot of beige food.
Okay,
if you
but
saw
still.
if you saw the movie Fargo,
Yeah.
those are my people. I grew up with all those people, right? The steam buffet and all that
Banana
sort of thing.
cream pie, right?
Yeah, yeah. But my mom was actually a really good cook. My grandmother, who also lived not far from us, was a great cook too. And we spent a lot of time in the kitchen. My parents were very welcoming to people coming into the community, my friends. My friends joked that my mom was sort of like June Cleaver. We could have friends stay overnight, and she would come down with a breakfast tray with, fresh fruit and pancakes and scrambled eggs, and just set it down and have at it. I mean, I grew up in a home that was viewed food as very important. It wasn't fancy necessarily.
And not ethnic. You weren't getting ethnic food.
No, but ethnic, I don't like that word so much, because everyone grows up with, my comfort food is different from your comfort food is different from someone else who might have grown up in Northern California or the South,
Yeah.
So it's kind of a word that we try to get around ethnic food. It's like non-American or immigrant food.
So
I
what's
think
the
is
word
good.
you use?
Immigrant food.
Immigrant
Yeah,
food.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of like I remember years ago interviewing the guys who are Dean and DeLuca. And it wasn't, I was producing an interview, and the host of the show kept talking about gourmet food. And they said, don't use that word. We don't use the word gourmet food. It's
Yeah.
good food.
Good food. good sophisticated food.
Well, regardless, you didn't grow up with immigrant food at every corner.
No, my mom was experimental. I mean, she goes, kids, tonight we're having chicken Kiev, and we'd like, ooh,
Yeah.
you know, like, or we go to Minneapolis, that was our big treat, and go to the Nanking for like some
Right,
gloppy Chinese.
right.
But you know, it's funny how I think, you know, when we talk about our favorite pizza or chili or something like that, we always love the one that we had first or the one that we grew up with. So intellectually, I mean, having done this now for so many years, I know that I'm supposed to like dark chocolate, bitter chocolate, better than Hershey's milk chocolate.
But every
there's
now
this
and then you feel like a
yeah,
milk
there's
chocolate.
this little part of me that I like this milk chocolate better, and just goes back to
Or just as
taste
much.
memory or just as much.
It's possible
right.
to have both.
You can appreciate both
Because
for
I do
different
that
reasons.
too. It's like, okay, I get the dark chocolate
Right.
thing, but like just last week, for whatever reason, I was craving milk chocolate and got it, and it was the bomb.
Sure.
So, but you come here from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Thinking you're going to go into the Foreign Service?
Sure, I was ready to take the Foreign Service exam. In fact, I took it and failed. It's really hard. It's really hard.
You could have taken it
it's like a
again.
law exam or something.
But what was your
so
goal?
I'm slinging pizzas at Pizzeria Georgetown.
Really?
And I'm getting ready to take the test again. I got a call from
At Uno? Pizzeria Uno?
Pizzeria Uno.
You know
right
who
down
else
here.
worked there?
Who?
Bradley Cooper.
Awesome.
Later.
Wow.
So there's,
we
you know,
overlapped there
you-
somehow.
well, you guys
or
have a
didn't
thing
overlap.
now. You
yeah. I'll have
You
to.
can bond.
Yeah. Awesome.
Anyway.
But I got this call from an investigative reporter who was an instructor of mine at Georgetown, and he said, "Hey, you know, we've got a clerk job here." It was a copy aide position, and it was like an in. I thought, wow. I had interned at both ABC News and the Chicago Sun-Times before, so I got this. You know,
a
I
little
was
bit of news cred.
interested in
Right.
the behind-the-scenes stuff and everything, and asking, you know, getting paid to ask people questions and everything. So I took this job, and you know, a year of answering phones and running newspapers and helping people on different projects. You will do anything to get out of that job, right?
Yeah.
So all these jobs go up, and you're like, I could be the assistant weather editor's assistant, you know, and you go apply for all these jobs. Well, one week, Phyllis Richmond, my predecessor, was looking for an assistant, and so was Bob Woodward. And of course, I applied to both of them, right? And I had a very nice interview with both of them, and I got a very nice thanks, but no thanks from Mr. Woodward.
Yeah.
And Phyllis said, I like you. I think we can make this work, you know? And so there was a test week where I had to go home and test some recipes. We had 2 food sections a week at the time. And do some random calls for her for a story that she was working on, make reservations. And she had all these famous friends, too. It was like, oh, Susan Stamberg, Roger Mudd, the Roger Mudd. You know, it was kind of fun for a little kid, you know.
And you were like hooking up her dinner dates for her?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It was a great fun. And as she got to trust me, I started, I did the bulk of the testing for the food section at the time, unless someone was working on a story and wanted to do it him or herself. But that's where I learned how to cook. You know, one
So
week
you
I was
have to
making.
literally test the recipes.
Yeah, I was like Joe Reeder. I had no, you know, background training or anything. I would have the same questions anyone else would on a
Were
recipe.
you using your own kitchen?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, the Post was paying for my groceries and everything, which was awesome.
And were you able to go get equipment that you needed?
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
okay.
pots, pans, all this sort of thing. Yeah, but I had like my little dull knives and everything, and I would bring in samples the next day. Like, here's a colonial cake, here's Alice Waters pizza, here's something else that someone is working on. So I ate very well, and I was spending more on groceries, I think, than my rent at the time. It was
So
crazy.
you have Bob Woodward to thank for your career.
When I run into him, Bob, thank you. You
Yeah.
changed my life by
And
rejecting me.
Did you consider, I mean, was your relationship with Phyllis mentor-protege then? Or
Very
was it
much
you
so.
just worked together?
No, early on, she taught me so much, and this is an era. It was an interesting time to be at the Washington Post in the '80s. Tom Shales was the TV critic. Phyllis, Nina Hyde was like this, you know, major fashion critic. It was every day I would go to work and learn from all these people, you know. And I remember with Phyllis, she was tough. She was
Yeah.
really tough, but she was also very appreciative of, you know, one going the extra mile for her too.
In her time, she was as big a departure for food criticism in the city as you were when you succeeded her. Because do you remember the guy who preceded her? I think his name was Donald Dresden.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was a completely other era of food critic.
Sure, sure.
I don't even know quite how to describe it, except that I don't think he was anonymous. And I think that it was always an event for a restaurant when Mr. Dresden was coming to eat. It was just a different, I mean, the whole world, food criticism was different back then.
Yeah, you could keep secrets back then.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I really miss now is that, pre-internet, you could go to a place in the burbs and like a great little Thai place or a great destination place, and you could keep it, hold on to it until the story came out, and then broadcast it to a larger audience. And now with Yelp and social media, like everyone is all over everything right away. The paint is drying, they're there.
Well, you brought up social media, so let me ask you this. Because we are in an era of social media and phones and Instagram and all that, do you think you still need a disguise?
Every other week it seems one of my peers from around the country is like, I'm out, and I'm out, but not that way. But I do think that I think some element of anonymity is really important. I know there are pictures of me in kitchens and people say, oh, they know who you are, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, I mean, I take that seriously, but this is what I hear all the time. But I also go 3 or 4 times to a restaurant, and one of those times, someone doesn't notice me. And you get the seat by the bathrooms or whatever. And I have little tricks of, I'm not doing this. I would never wear this to a restaurant because it's so obvious, like, it's me, right? Like, it's me in a baseball cap, and like, not me, in sunglasses, right? But I have gone in disguise, in serious disguise, expensive disguise, to all the top restaurants over the years. In fact, I remember very early on, I wanted to go to Laboratorio del Galileo, which is a restaurant within a restaurant, 20 seats.
He was one of the first to do that.
The chef was cooking this close, right? How am I going to do that? So I had this elaborate disguise involving a lot of people. And I went in, I was so proud of this disguise, right? We're sitting like 5 feet away. And the second of 12 courses came up, and it was an Italian wedding soup. Steamy soup, I remember. And the buddy that I was with, he goes, dude, you need to go to the bathroom right now. Your face is falling off. And like, I had this like little Simon Legree thing. I had a beard, and it was curling, I looked like the Frito Bandito or something, I'm like, I had a quick little repair job there.
But seriously.
But I think it's important because anonymity is important on many different levels, because unlike a book or a movie, they can't change it for a critic. They can make a lot of things great for you or better for you if they know who you are. They can give you a better seat. They can give you a better server. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a restaurant and I might come in 15 minutes late and everyone's ordering, oh, would you like this table by the window? I'm like, no, we weren't seated there. Or bad waiters mysteriously just disappear.
Yeah.
And someone else comes on. The general manager is waiting on you.
And
like,
how did that
happen?
I had an experience
like, what happened to that nice little girl?
And I'd love your thoughts on this, because I did get to eat with Phyllis once, and we went to a restaurant, and we were sitting down, and we were just talking, and all of a sudden she said, "Uh-oh, I've been disguised. I've been made." I think that's the term you use too, because here clearly comes the owner. And all of a sudden somebody comes over and he's, oh, how's everything? And then she said, watch, the next thing they're going to do, they're going to make the poor chef have to come out and talk to me. And she said that she hated that because the last thing the chef wants to do is come out and talk to the critic.
Sure.
They want to, but this must happen to you.
Or they want to come out and stay for half an hour.
Yeah, but I mean, do you
too.
ever just come right out and say to them, look, I know I'm the critic, but let's just go back to the way it was?
I have great respect for the people who do what they do, and I think there's this sort of little unspoken thing like, hey, I'm doing my job, you do your job. I just prefer that they not tell their staff or just go about, just treat everyone as if.
Because it's a rookie move,
important.
Isn't it, at the end of the day?
It is kind of, and you can just see it, everyone sort of tenses up and people start dropping things or, they're pouring the wine or something.
Because,
you just look away,
Right.
Talk amongst yourselves, right? Yeah, it's.
I've told you this, but when I had Nathan's, I just had a sign. Rather than having Phyllis Richardman's picture downstairs in the staff bulletin board, I just had a sign that said, everyone is Phyllis Richman.
I love that. Yeah. Everyone's a VIP
well,
or
if you
whatever,
treated
right?
everybody like they were Phyllis, then you
sure.
wouldn't have to keep asking if
For
Phyllis
sure.
was there.
Yeah.
But have you ever gone to a restaurant because it was so bad or so good, just outed yourself? and said, I think I need to let you guys know I'm a restaurant critic, and this is spiraling down real fast.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Or you would not do that?
I just can't imagine a circumstance
situation,
where I
okay.
would do that.
Where it'd be
Yeah,
you just take it
because-
home and write it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And you
I've
did
done
that
a couple times lately too, huh?
right.
You know,
Well, and you
yeah.
did, and you know it's interesting. There was a lot of mention made recently when you reviewed La Vie at
Sure.
the Wharf and gave it. You shredded them, and but what was interesting to me is it wasn't really that much more critical than the review you gave Nobu, and I don't think Nobu's review got as much attention, did it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it depends upon who you're talking to, whether it's the restaurateur or the diners.
Right.
No, that didn't, because I think the price point was so different at Nobu, and it was still seen as
I just wonder why
something
the
of
La
an
Vie
exotic creature.
criticism was such a big deal.
Yeah,
Because it is your job.
I mean, I think people think that we delight in writing
Yeah.
these things.
No.
Well, no, it's sort of painful actually. But the reason I was just going to write it off the first time I went there. I thought, it's like
Well, that's what I was curious about.
too expensive and everything. I thought, no, it's on the waterfront. They're charging a lot of money. 4 of us spent $600 there one night. There wasn't one of 5 bottles that wasn't less than $80 a bottle. I just thought this is kind of a ripoff. And I
the
want
higher
people
the
to know about it.
expectation too, the
Sure.
higher the
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and there is so much fanfare for every restaurant that opens.
You
down
bet. And
there.
it's so competitive now. And my job is not necessarily to cheerlead for restaurants, it's to advocate for the diner. People are spending their hard-earned money to eat out.
So when you write a review, such as the one you wrote of La Vie, and I don't know if everybody here read it or not, but it was harsh. Not unfair, but harsh. Do you show it to anybody other than your editor beforehand? Is it really an anguishing process when you're about
Sometimes
to?
I'll show it to my partner, like, oh, what do you think of this? And I think, and he gives great feedback.
That's good.
But, just sort of, I don't want to show it to too many people because people talk too.
Right.
But before any review, negative or positive, goes in print, at least 5 or 6 people see it, and sign off on my jokes or references or whatever.
But nobody can call you back. None of your editors are going to say, oh, well, this review's too bad. This is a decision that rests entirely with you.
Yeah, I will have
Sentences
discussions
might
with
get
editors
changed.
sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think it's good to have that.
Right.
Everyone needs an editor, truly.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And I think it's good to bounce ideas off of people and colleagues. Have you been there? And I went there 3 times. I might have gone a 4th, but I thought, I've got enough material here right now.
Because
Yeah.
there's certain things that aren't changing.
Sure.
And
on the other hand, I went to Founding Farmers 7 times before I reviewed that and gave that a 0-star review. Just because I felt like I really need to get this right. The one big fear I think for critics is like, oh my God, you're going to get the color of the wall wrong. You're so
it'll be one
focused.
little detail.
Yeah.
And then the focus. Yeah.
And so it's a real responsibility.
Do you
I think.
commiserate with theater critics and movie critics? Because again.
Sometimes, yeah.
And do they envy that you can go back 7 times?
Well, like movies don't change that much, right?
But you go back. But you can go
the
back.
ending was completely different. It's like.
No, that's a good. You got me. But you can go back and see something a second time a different way. A play can change.
Absolutely.
A play
Plays
can
change. Actors move in and out.
But you're right. Movies don't.
And I do think like a meal is sort of like live theater.
Better
so I guess
be.
If there's a comparison, it would be live theater.
It better be.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
it costs as much, and for a lot of people,
Right.
that is their entertainment.
You bet.
When you are coming up with your dining guide and your top 10 and your Hall of Fame, is that entirely in you? Or do you go back to some of your frequent diners and say, this is what I'm, do you have like a kitchen cabinet, so to speak?
I don't. I listen to people, but I think ultimately my name is on the product and I have to be responsible for everything in there, And
are you writing that
maybe there
list
should be a
in your-
list like, here's what my friends want to see in here.
Well,
but,
no,
but
I
it's
get
a good
that.
point.
There are few people in journalism with the kind of power you have, you and others with your job. And truly, in an era of disparate media now and newspapers folding, there are fewer and fewer restaurant critics. And it really is the big cities right?
For the most part,
But
sure.
you have a unique power. It is entirely your call.
I think that power rests with the institution, though.
Yeah,
You know.
but you have to do it well.
Yeah.
You have to
yeah.
represent them well.
Of course, yeah.
And
Can't drink too much. Can't
well,
have too much fun.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, are you working on your top 10 list all the time? Is it fixed, or are people falling in and out of it as you're going? Or restaurants falling in and out of it?
Favorites change all the time.
Yeah.
Like with seasons. There are places that I would go to or want to go to in fall, and maybe not in the summer. So I think that list is ever evolving. And one of the luxuries of working for a newspaper like the Washington Post is that I get to scout these restaurants. I get to take their pulse throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I might go to the Little Washington twice, not just once, or other smaller places too.
What about when a friend owns a restaurant?
Ooh, you know what? I don't have a lot of friends in the industry, I have to say.
But it could happen.
It does happen, and you know what? It can ruin friendships. I have one person, Mark Furstenberg, the baker here in town, who I've known for years and years, even before I moved back here. You're not going to all of a sudden, okay, we can't be friends anymore. But every time I write about him, or almost like 99% of the time I write about him, I mention, hey, we're friends. Just throw that out there.
Yeah, and Mark is also one who'll call you up right away and tell you what he thinks about what you wrote.
Oh yeah, he's a great sounding board.
Well, I want to use one restaurant that, if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay, we'll just move on. But to me, I think it's an example of how complicated your job can be. Mirabelle. Mm-hmm. It arrived with such fanfare.
It sure did.
And it's coming from you too, but it's not on any of your lists.
Yeah, it was sort of going through a transition.
Should we tell people who we're talking about?
Yeah, Mirabelle is a big deal restaurant on 16th and K, and it was opened by, very splashy, very handsome.
I loved
Not
it.
too far from the White House, so like kind of a power destination restaurant.
It was a great arrival.
With Frank Ruda from Polena and
Marvelous
other,
resume.
Used to work at the White House,
Yep.
and Aggie Chin, a very good pastry chef, who has since relocated to San
Gorgeous
Francisco.
room.
Yeah, gorgeous room, and it opened very splashy. I thought it was really good, and then something happened. The general manager left, and with her there was a lot of talent, I think, too, or from a service perspective.
I wondered if the money went away.
It's still owned by the same owner.
I just wondered if the budget got changed. But anyway, but go on. I think it's.
But I think, like, at that level, you really have to perform at a certain consistent level. I mean, people expect that.
If you open big.
You open big, and people go there, well, I spent all this money and it was okay. Well, we're in this restaurant boom that seems to be without end right now, and I love that. I mean, it's great for me and it's great for diners, but it's not always so great for restaurants because it's really hard to keep staff. Line cooks will go to another restaurant for an extra $2 or whatever, Waiters will move on to the next restaurant.
And you're so dependent on them.
And it's really hard, yeah. So any fluctuation, in the case of Mirabelle, I think losing an important general manager was a big deal. She has since come back.
Okay.
Frank and Aggie have left the building. She has since come back with a new chef in the Boston area. I'm in the process of visiting it.
Yeah.
So I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, on the other hand, a restaurant can start small and grow big. I don't want to use the Inn at Little Washington because that's such a separate category, but there are restaurants that grow.
Right.
And it's just that when you start big, it's the measure is your bar is so much higher.
Sure.
That,
I always think it would be smart for a restaurant to start with maybe 10 dishes and a really well-trained staff, and not try to be too fancy in the dining room. And then, depending upon the concept, of course, but you have to do a few things well before you can do a lot well, I think.
Another thing that interests me too here in Washington are neighborhoods that run hot and cold. Because you've been here long enough to remember where once Georgetown was the hub of all things culinary.
Sure.
And then it sort of shifted downtown to K Street, and now it's shifted to just
Shaw
neighborhoods all over the
Northeast,
place, and even out in the suburbs.
Right.
Is that a good thing? Would you rather see balance just all over the city?
No, I think it's great for diners,
Yeah.
I love what's happening on 14th Street. I love what's happening in Shaw and down at the waterfront, for instance. It really makes the city a like
The
a more
Wharf turned out
impressive
well.
place to live in. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
because
Wharf
there's
turned out well.
Del Mar, your #1
Sure.
restaurant.
Yeah. There are other restaurants that are good there too.
Yeah.
You know, Kalawa for Pan Asian and you know, Hank's for oysters, Mi Vida for Mexican.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just well done
Sure.
down there. I'm not quite as taken with City Center myself, only because it doesn't seem as heavily, the emphasis isn't as much on restaurants as it is on the Wharf. I mean,
Although you've got places like Momofuku for Great Asian, and you've got
DBGB.
Centralina
Yeah.
and DBGB.
Centralina made your list.
Yeah, and so I think there are enough markers down there to make it worth someone's while.
I
to
like
visit.
that in your Hall of Fame you outed where you like to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, Buck's Fishing and Camping. It's not too far from where I live. The waiters know me. I think, and I write about it. Every critic I know has a place where they, you know, people know you, and it's like they just let you be. And you know, when you're around fancy stuff all the time, as one is in this job, it's so nice to just get a nice fish and chips.
Sometimes
or
you
a
just want to
burger,
eat what you want to eat.
or a Caesar salad.
Right.
Yeah. So that is where I kind of go on my off hours.
Do you cook at home as much as you used to?
Wow, I don't. You know, my refrigerator
That's okay.
looks like a wine locker.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing, actually. You know, I really don't have a problem. There's milk and an apple and lots of wine. You know.
Are there nights when nights or lunches when you have to go out to eat and you just don't feel like eating?
Sure.
How
That
do you
happens during the, you know, it was like 80, 90 degrees this summer.
And you're
I'm
working on your
a fall dining
dining
guide.
guide, yeah.
So no thanks, soft shell crabs, watermelon salads. You know, you're eating like, hey, do you have haunches of venison or mashed potatoes or like bring on the cold weather wines, you know. Yeah.
But do you, what's your formula then? I mean, do you just go into another place in your head? Is that, is that the professional
I've been doing
in
this
you?
long enough so you
The
can
show
sort of
must go on?
separate. People often say, oh, I'd love to have that job. Well, you know, I mean, get out your tiny violin, right? But there are some drawbacks, you know. And,
Oh, it can be a big violin because not all the restaurants are Michelin-starred restaurants.
I think people often think you're eating this fabulous food, swigging champagne and everything, and that is so not the case.
That's why
I mean,
it's
just
work.
like any other critic's medium. You know, it's there are good books, bad movies.
And you've got to go from page 1 to the end of the book.
Absolutely.
You've got to go eat there and you've got to have the full meal.
Yeah.
And you've got to go back.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are restaurants where you can say at the get-go, I don't need to go back, right?
I think so. If there's
Or at the
a
very
mom and
least
pop in Herndon or Gaithersburg, if it's, you know, I love to surprise people with little mom and pops or whatever. We also have a cheap eats columnist too who sort of covers that territory. But very early on, I was trying to do a Maryland, Virginia, and 2 district restaurants every month. Now that the Post has sort of positioned itself as a national newspaper, I will say I'm doing restaurants that
You're
might
doing
be
the whole country.
buzzier. Yeah, well, yeah.
And you won a
that's kinda
James
fun.
Beard Award for doing the whole country.
I
right?
did. Yeah,
so-
thank you. That
Yeah.
was fun. The Post.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
That was really a treat. I mean, it was sort of like a master class. The Post sent me around the country for a year to identify the top 10 food cities. And I wasn't just parachuting in for a few days. I was spending 8, 10 days there, grocery shopping, going to cooking classes, going to food-related museums, you know, drinking, eating it high and low. And it was really fun. And what I found at the end when I read all these things, what it takes to be a good food city. It helps if you live near a large body of water. It helps if you have 2 or 3 classic dishes, and it helps if your population likes to drink.
Okay.
New Orleans, New York,
Yeah.
Washington,
Oh God, yeah.
you know,
right.
yeah.
San Francisco.
San Francisco, sure.
What's your favorite food city?
Right now, I would have to say Los Angeles. That's kind of
Because?
where it's at. Yeah, you can eat
Because it has been,
so
it has,
well there.
it comes
Yeah,
and goes,
I mean,
doesn't
they're
it?
not known for fine dining, but boy, they've got regional Chinese that we don't
Yeah.
have here, or
Yeah.
a lot of other cities don't have, you know. And you can eat very well up and down the price chain, which I like.
Yeah.
You know, I just think it's a place that certainly in my industry, everyone's eyes are on it because they just lost their Pulitzer Prize-winning food critic Jonathan Gold. He died earlier this summer. They're looking for a new critic. They're going to totally rethink that position in the food section.
Have you thought of moving to Los Angeles?
I love working for Jeff Bezos at the Washington
we heard you
Post.
say that.
Yeah, I am very happy. I am very happy.
Well, then I might
He's been
apply.
very, very good to me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you must think sometimes where you'll go with this, because it's. You know, I mean, I'm not saying there are days when you just don't want to do it anymore. We all feel that way about jobs.
You're speaking on behalf of readers, no doubt.
No,
Like,
no,
when's
no.
he going to leave?
No.
Yeah.
Actually, I think readers feel quite because they know you, and that's a hugely important part of being a critic.
Well, you know what I like
Reader
is
trust.
that I hear from kids in grade school, and I hear from 90-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and everything in between. And it's funny, a year or so ago, you know, you get a lot of, not so much mail anymore, you get a lot of texts and emails and
Yeah,
things
well,
like
you
that.
do your online chat.
Yeah, the online chat is great fun. It gives me a sense of what people are thinking about. But I got a letter in this beautiful script, and it was from an older gentleman who lived in Arlington. And he said, I'm looking for a certain regional Chinese or a dish or something I couldn't find. I set it aside, and then I got another one like a year later. I thought, oh, I think this guy wrote to me a year ago. And with this, there was a sense of urgency. He goes, I'm 99 years old. I'd like to get a response before I die. Like, oh my God, I'd track him down, you know.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I hope this guy is still alive, you know. I need to reach out to him and give him his answer. I'll take him to this, you know, Chinese dish or this restaurant.
Right.
Yeah, so it's fun. I like that interaction that you get with people.
We don't have a lot of time left, but a couple of things I wanted to get to, because I'm very glad that you care about the audio level in restaurants. I think that matters a lot. And you know,
Sure.
I felt that even when I was younger. It's not just because my son always says, oh, Mom, that's just because you're old. And I go, no, I've always liked to be able to talk to my dinner companion.
Sure.
And it's nice that you include that.
I think it's
Can
important.
it kill it for you, a restaurant? Can that noise level kill a restaurant experience?
Yeah, I was
for
just
you?
in a restaurant not too long ago, and I do these sound checks for restaurants, right? And I looked up the noise equivalent. We're talking about 60 decibels here, and this was 100 decibels.
Yeah.
And the noise equivalent would be a jet engine at takeoff.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how much fun that was.
Well,
you
and
know.
how romantic is it if you're shouting at the person
There
you're
you go.
dining with? Well,
Yeah.
I know it's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
But then I also miss tablecloths.
Tablecloths
there
have
was-
gone the way of.
Well, they have, yeah. And I know
payphones.
why, because I owned a restaurant, because tablecloths were expensive, especially if you use cotton tablecloths.
Sure.
And if you change the tablecloths, I mean, at Nathan's, we would change the tablecloth if you just had an iced tea, but,
That gets pretty expensive.
because, well, it does, but I
Yeah.
still think it was a good thing. Or else figure out how to soundproof your ceiling. I mean, there's ways around making your dining room look on trend, but people still able to hear each other.
Sure. I think one of the problems is a lot of places are opening in these with cement structures and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and they would rather spend that extra money on a line cook or a pastry chef or some fancy piece of art
Right.
than on soundproofing. Soundproofing is so boring, you know?
Well, get the building to put the money in, and you'll be a
Well,
longer
there you
tenant.
go. You have to do it before, though, because if you do it after you're
Yeah.
open, it's really expensive and tricky.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just a pet peeve of mine. Another is when you call a restaurant and they say they're fully committed. When did that start? When did people stop
wow.
saying we're booked?
I think that was in the 80s, 90s. Yeah.
Because I just
there's
think
a-
of it in terms of another
Fully
committed in another way. You know,
Right.
like you've been committed. To
Right.
But you call up a restaurant, it's like, okay, that's one pet peeve when they say fully committed. The other one is then when I just say, well, let's just go by there anyway and see if we can get in.
You usually can.
And you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I tell people just
That's,
go.
Yeah.
It's like I say,
Just
people
go,
here for the
show
Q&A, just show up.
Yeah,
We'll
just
see
show
you.
up. I'm glad they did. Yeah.
Nothing
yeah.
against what the people on the phone say.
Right.
But I know. What do you see? What's your takeaway from your dining guide that are going to be the trends going into the fall and winter?
Well, I think right now we're in the middle of some great Pan-Asian food around town, and it tends to be whether it's at the Line Hotel with spoken English, where you have to stand up to eat. Sorry, you can't do that right now.
I know. Well, better
Or
than before.
Makedo,
Yeah,
or
love Makedo.
Momofuku downtown. You've got a new chef cooking there doing some great work, and I like that a lot. You know, I think it's accessible to a lot of people. There's a lot more good vegetarian options, I think, which is important. I mean, I'm a dedicated carnivore, but I like a break now and then too, and that is a very vocal demographic with my readership, and I'm always seeking out, or trying to find good vegetarian options on menus. If you don't offer that, one or two really stellar meatless dishes in 2008, you're not doing your job as a chef, I don't think.
You couldn't be a critic if you weren't a carnivore, could you?
It'd be hard. We have a food editor who's a vegetarian, but
that's an editor.
But yeah, that's. But you have to cook and everything.
Yeah.
But no, you could not do this job without. Actually, the hardest part is not the eating part all the time. The hardest part is the socialization all the time. I'm out like 13 meals a week, and it's sort of like sometimes you just want to not talk.
Could you ever do it alone?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a huge single population in Washington.
Yeah.
So I think on one of those 3 or 4 visits that I
It's
do,
good to
I will
go
just go to
alone.
the bar, show up by myself, read a book,
Yeah.
whatever. And I think so it's important to get that kind of experience.
And you could probably pay more attention.
Yes.
too.
Yeah, you can't eat as much, obviously,
Right.
but you can remember the song that's playing or the funny thing that the waiter said or concentrate on a dish. Like what was in that dish again?
Yeah.
Was it nutmeg or mace? Find out.
You're not going to believe this, but our time is up.
Oh, I'm bummed.
We didn't get to talk about the impact Trump has had on food. We didn't get to talk about food delivery services. How many more things are on my list here? Overpouring the wine? No. So you'll just have to come back.
I would love that.
Because it's been great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. And thank you at home. And Tom,
You're the best.
International Man of Mystery.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming to the Q&A Cafe.